I'm the only one up there, but I'm not the only one who's going to be presenting here. I'm here with my amazing colleague Frederick, we're coming from Yamato, and we're going to talk about a passion we share. So here goes. Imagine a world where you can hear this statement. Last year, our leadership development programs delivered 6.4 million euros in bottom line impact. An amazing world, isn't it? We have spent a good part of, I would say, 5 or more years trying to solve this problem. I've been in leadership training for most of my career, and I would say this is one of the biggest frustrations for me. Not being able to measure and prove the impact we do. A really important kind of discovery for me was, if you've seen the movie Moneyball, that's a lot where that comes from. So watch it if you haven't seen it. But we believe we have cracked the code on how to actually measure leadership development, and we would like to share some of the insights.
So yes, the title of this talk is Measuring the Right Things in Leadership Development. So it's about people and numbers. And so if we look at this first question, how do we measure leaders? If we start with the basics, like what are leaders really measured on? It's really based on outcomes and results. Are you hitting your targets? Is your team performing? Are you hitting your business targets? So that's sort of the baseline. And there's a lot of things we could measure now and leadership development specifically. But Tom, what are some other things we should measure?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to measure results. What leaders achieve, but what we're missing is how. How are they achieving it? How actually comes before the what. And we all know, I think, that there's a lot of leaders out there who are performing, but maybe not through great leadership. And the problem with that is that it's actually costing our organizations more than what the benefit from the results are. So we need to start actually measuring how they're achieving the results.
And if we look at the next thing, what is it that we typically measure? If we take leadership development, usually it turns into some sort of an initiative, a program, and we're really great at measuring the learning experience. I think we heard from the previous speaker, 5, 8 hours of AI cramming, this is amazing. And we're great at this. You know, the NPS score, the 4.8 out of 5, you're willing to recommend this to a colleague. Did you really learn a lot? We measure a lot of things about the learning experience. So what's another thing we need to have?
Well, I think what's interesting is it's important to measure the learning experience. And we do it, I think, because that's where we are. That's what we can measure, because that's the environment we're sitting in. But as we've heard many times here, if it's not applied, it really doesn't have an impact. So we need to start actually measuring the on-the-job application. How does this show up? If we're not able to measure leadership in the real environment, it doesn't really matter what kind of learning we do, because that's not where the impact is.
So thirdly, when we evaluate and look at, okay, was this really an effective experience? Because great experiences usually, result in great leaders, right? We ask a lot about the leader's perspective. How was the learning experience? Have you grown? Have you been able to apply? Is there a different perspective?
Well, absolutely, and I think this is important, and we measure that because it's linked many times to the learning experience. But when it comes to leadership, it's an interaction with the people around me. And the perspective that is the most important is actually the perspective of the people I lead, the team. What's their perspective? So we need to start measuring the perspective of others, not only ourselves.
Yes, thank you. So when we're looking to, evaluate, so we look at this, what is it they achieve? What's the learning experience? What does the leader think? What do we typically evaluate? We talk a lot about skills. So I heard feedback as an example, maybe it's coaching. That's what we look at. And then when we measure the impact, it's really about the quality. So we did a course on feedback. Is this person better at giving or coaching? And that's how we kind of measure it. Here's a skill or capability we're developing. Good, bad, what's the quality? But Tom, I see you have behaviors and frequency. So instead of skills, it's behaviors. Instead of quality, it's frequency, or on top of. What is that really?
And let's start with behaviors. Leadership doesn't show up as skills. It shows up as behaviors. That's why we need to unpack leadership into observable behaviors. And we need to have, again, our team to actually interpret and give us feedback on how we step into those behaviors. And relating it to frequency, we usually say that the secret sauce of leadership is frequent leadership. It's more important that I do an impactful behavior often rather than that I do it well. I don't know how many times I've heard, I deliver great feedback, I just don't do it enough. And it makes no impact. And the amazing thing about frequency, the more I do it, the better I get at it.
Okay, well, so if you look here, we have, team. So you need to involve the team, you need to ask about behaviors, it's some sort of a frequency, whether you're good or bad at it. I mean, it sounds pretty complicated, it sounds maybe resource intensive, difficult. Sometimes you can see it as easy, but like how do you actually then make this work?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the trick to it, and that's, I think, what took so long time. And looking at this, I'm sure many of you think, this looks so simple, and it is. It's amazingly simple to actually focus on the right environment, in the right context. But you also need to do it so it works. What we do, I've created something called a habit scan. And here you see it, we're actually decoded leadership into 60 impactful leadership behaviors. And here you have a leadership behavior statement. But we ask the team to answer on their leader on a frequency scale that's forward-looking. So all of a sudden, this becomes a feed forward that actually is actionable. So one thing also, this takes about 7 minutes to complete and to answer, and about 2-3 minutes for the leader to set up and send out. So it's really quick.
Okay, so about 10 minutes in total. But then, so if you ask this, maybe before a program or after a program, what sort of data would one get from this that would be useful? And
here I think the kind of where it all falls in, and we get what we measure. So what you see here is what we give an organization, a true leader grid, and what you see here is an individual. We can measure observable, experienced behavioral shift on my leader. And isn't that the whole purpose of us spending, $50 billion per year in leadership development? But we don't measure it, but we can measure perceived leadership behavior, and that has a concrete impact on the bottom line.
Okay. So if we take this, so let's assume here though, so this is maybe before the program is the red dot, and then we have a line to the blue dot, so we can see that in the eyes of others, when asking other people, you can see that they're perceiving that you're doing more behaviors. But you mentioned something at the beginning, it's 6-point-something million euros, I believe. How does this translate into impact, this behavioral shift we're seeing?
Because, I mean, to be able to capture this behavioral shift, it's shifting what we call habit score is a lead indicator for great leadership. So it influences a trust score, but also engagement. And there's a lot of research around engagement and how it links to bottom line. So we've taken that data and actually monetized and measured how does a shift like this impact the bottom line. And we've done that for Volvo Cars, one of our clients. And then there's thousands of leaders that go through the program. And this is what Urban says about the ability to actually measure the impact of their programs. So measuring leadership behavioral shift is super important. I would say as a last note, we get what we measure. So it's time for us to actually shift the focus from the learning environment to also measure the real work environment also. Thank you.